Welcome to the 3-to-Play Games podcast. Each week we get together to talk and argue about all things video games. No matter how salty our debates get, we're always eager to discuss gaming culture, and we hope that you'll join in on the fun. My name is Josh, and joining me on the microphone today is...
Brian.
And Tom.
So welcome to the podcast. So we'll start off with something simple today, and we'll talk about what we're currently playing. So right now, in my systems that I have, I'm actually playing a lot of Madden 18. I'm not a huge sports guy, but something that just brought me into the game this year was the long shot story mode, and I thought that was pretty interesting. But other than that, Titanfall 2 is going to be where I'm bouncing between right now, so I have something shooting.
Have you gotten to the point in Madden story mode where your character is arrested for the first time?
No, I didn't, but hopefully that's not a part of the story.
Don't worry, it doesn't affect your life or career at all.
Okay, all right. Tom, what are you currently playing?
I'm currently playing through my first ever Telltale game, and I am playing Batman, the Telltale series. I'm getting a really, really big thrill out of it. It's basically baby's first point-and-click adventure game for me because I also missed out on that genre growing up. But I like it. I like what they're doing in terms of creating a unique Batman story with familiar, iconic characters and everything, and just shaping the story myself is super fun. And I'm also obsessively writing down every choice I make because I'm going to try to go back and play it again and make sure I make different choices. So totally digging it.
What episode are you on right now?
2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brian?
Well, I play most of my games on PC, so I have trouble trying to pick what game I want to play because I have a huge list of games. Right now, I usually play a lot of Counter-Strike and a lot of Rocket League, but I also have a PlayStation 4 because currently that is the higher list of exclusives. And right now, Bloodborne is in my console, and that can actually take us into our weekly topic of our top 3 games of all time, because that is actually on my number 1 list of top 3 games. That's my number 1 favorite game, and I play that game all the time.
It's good that you led with your number 1, because what people are naturally most excited here is number 3. So by building from 1 to 3, you're maximizing audience interest.
Well, I mean, it's kind of led us into that.
So Brian has a definitive list, is what he's saying now.
I do have a definitive list. Yes. That is my favorite game, and it's usually always in my console, in my PlayStation 4, unless someone else is over and I have to change out games, or I'm on I have to beat this other game type thing. But otherwise, that's in my console.
So
all the time.
What is it about Bloodborne that you just like so much?
It is my favorite game because I love horror movies, and I like cosmic horror, and that game is built on cosmic horror. I like adventure games, I like RPGs, and that game brings all that to the table. And I like very difficult games, and it reminds me of the original Legend of Zelda. They don't tell you anything. They throw you into the game, and you're just like, here you go, figure it out. And that's basically what Bloodborne is. They throw you in.
Yeah, I'm currently playing through it right now,
yes.
And I'm having one hell of a time trying to play this game. He's correct when he says it doesn't hold your hand at all. There's been so many times that I've been calling him in the middle of the night or texting him or trying to have him even jump in on the game to help me because I can't beat the first boss. I was stuck at the beginning of the game for about 6 to 7 hours, and I couldn't figure out what to do, and he's like, did you even level up your character yet? I'm like, you can do that?
Yes.
I have no idea you could do any of this stuff. I seriously went in blind on that game, so...
And they don't tell you anything, and there's an item in the game that you can summon other people, and I'm like, you can summon me, there's a bell in the game, and he's like, what bell? What are you talking about? I'm like, look in your inventory. He's like, I don't even have that, did you pick it up? And, like I said, it's just like the first Legend of Zelda. They don't hold your hand, they don't tell you anything, and I don't, you needed a strategy guide for the first Zelda, otherwise you ran around that game to every tree, every block. You had to blow everything up or burn every tree because... And that's how this game is. I mean, you have to figure everything out. There's stuff in that game that I definitely had to look up. I mean, there's there's a crazy amount of hidden stuff in that game, and I love that game. I've beat that game probably 4 or 5 times now, and I just still play it over and over again because you can play different classes in that game, and it just offers so much, and I keep going back to it, and I platinum that game, so I have no achievements to go for, but there's just something about that game. I keep going back to it and playing it over and over again.
So then that was number 1 apparently.
Yeah.
You got 2 and 3 still.
I do have 2 more. I have number 2 is Metal Gear Solid 4.
Nanomachines.
Yes. The only reason I like that game is because nanomachines. That's it.
All right, number 3.
You don't even need a story plot. The reason I like that game is because I played Metal Gear Solid 1 for the longest time, and that game caught my attention. And then Metal Gear Solid 2 came out, and any game that includes some guy doing cartwheels naked, flipping around anywhere, I mean,
It's the best game ever.
Best game ever, yeah. Yeah, that's cool, right?
Still, when it comes to that game, all I keep thinking of is, Meryl, do you remember me? I'm the guy who shit himself in the first game. I'm sorry, Metal Gear Solid, not the first game. I'm the guy who shit himself.
Let's get married.
Yeah, let's get married. End of story.
I mean, that's cinematic. Then you got number 3. I mean, that just blew me away. The story in that game, I mean, was just amazing, and I cried at the end of that game. Josh,
What?
Like a puss.
did you cry at the end of that game?
No.
No?
No.
You didn't?
I did not.
But
Microwave scene was amazing, but it's not tearful.
No. But that game was amazing, and then number 4 came out, and it just closed out a series that I played for years and years and years, and I loved it. And the cinematics in that game and the gameplay that they fine-tuned was just amazing, and it was awesome, and I loved it. And
I think it's
the
awesome
ending
you
of
loved
that
it.
game. The ending of that game just blew my mind, and it just closed out a series that was just close to me, and it just felt like a part of my life. Actually, Metal Gear Solid did, and it just ended.
Well, it didn't actually close the series because it was followed up with Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. So
Well,
that's actually the powerful emotional close to the Metal Gear series.
At the end of Metal Gear Solid 4, at that time, it was, a close to the series.
Right.
So, to me, Metal Gear Solid 4 was over at that time. So, my number 3. Number 3.
It's weird to do a top 3 when you go into 4.
Yeah, no, sorry.
He's breaking all the rules.
I'm breaking all the rules, yeah. My number 3 is Legend of Zelda 2, Adventure of Link.
Why isn't that your number 2?
Yeah.
Because I played that game when I was growing up as a kid. That was the second game I ever played. And the first game I ever played was the first Legend of Zelda. So
Legend of Zelda 2 was the second game you ever played, but it's not your number 2.
No, it's not. It's not my number 2. You're getting my numbers all confused. I'm getting my numbers all confused. But yes.
Why do you like Legend of Zelda 2? Why? Good.
I like that game, 1, because something clicked with me with RPGs. I love RPGs to this day. I like adventure games. I like fast-paced games, obviously with Bloodborne.
I would say, do you just like games that make me mad?
Yeah, I like games that make you mad, clearly. But that game introduced the RPG element to Legend of Zelda, and it was hard. It was definitely an extremely difficult game. It definitely got harder as time went on. It was definitely different from the first Legend of Zelda. And I don't know if it has the nostalgic factor to me, but when I played it, I liked it. As I grew up, I still liked it. I still like it to this day, and I can play it and still enjoy that game. I know there's a lot of hate for that game. I don't understand if people hate it because it changed The Legend of Zelda from the first one, but I enjoy that game for what they did, how hard it was, and just the type of gameplay that it introduced. And it will stay my top favorite Zelda game, no matter how much people hate it.
Do you keep going back to it because of it being like from your childhood, like constantly, like just the memories that you had playing it? Is that why you keep going back to it, or is it just because you enjoy the games that much?
I think it could be both, but I enjoy the game that much. Like I feel like it actually has the same impact on me that Bloodborne does. Like I beat Bloodborne, like I said, it platinumed it, but there's something about that game that I can keep going back to it and play it over and over again and just enjoy the gameplay. And Legend of Zelda Adventure of Link has the same feeling to me. Like I can go back and play it, get my ass kicked sometimes, but I remember where everything's at and I still enjoy playing that game.
Brian, I think it's really, really brave of you to be so passionately into the inferior 2D Zelda games. Like, you are just a pillar of courage, in my opinion.
I know, and I can't count, obviously, so, you know.
So he's actually talking about Legend of Zelda 1, I believe.
Yeah, I'm talking about that or Link to the Past, I don't know, you know, so.
Oh, they're all inferior. I'm just saying it's very brave of you to be in that camp.
So now that I got that out of the way, because the person that can't count and likes, you know, the worst Zelda game of all time.
Tom, you want to go with your top 3?
Yeah, well, I'm going to start with my number 2. My number 2 pick of all time.
Because I started with the best one, the number 1.
Yes, it is joke, yes. No, I'll go from number 3 to 1. So, my third favorite game of all time is a third game in a franchise, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. I think that is the perfect encapsulation of the Metal Gear franchise. Great storytelling, really great combat and stealth mechanics, awesome and inventive boss fights, really interesting like lore, and just kind of ballsy in that after setting up the kind of cliffhanger of what just happened in Metal Gear Solid 2, for 3, Kojima was just like, I'm going to take everything back to the beginning of the timeline and give you no answers. I'm going to give you an entire new set of events to follow to build up towards 4, which I thought was an interesting move to take when, you know, you're writing one of the most popular franchises on the PlayStation at the time. So, really fun game. I've bought it across multiple ports that it's been through, and I love it. I think it's just a masterpiece. It's so good.
Well, they took it back to the beginning until 5, right? Because isn't 5 before 3 now?
No, 5's in the 80s, 3's in the 60s.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. 3 basically starts a new trilogy that goes in order of chronological importance. 3, Peace Walker, and then Phantom Pain.
Yes. And
Okay.
5 was describing how there was 2 big bosses.
Right.
For
Yeah.
1
Spoiler
and 2,
alert.
which were
Spoiler alert.
Oh my!
More or less,
It's not my fault you haven't beat it.
the Metal Gear Solid canon can be boiled down into two trilogies: Snake's trilogy, which is 1, 2, and 4, and Big Boss's trilogy, which is 3, Peace Walker and Snake Eater. And Phantom Pain. 3,
Yes.
3, Peace Walker and Phantom Pain. There's some extra titles that jump back and forth between the two, but those are the core 6 games, honestly. And from there, I'll just move into my number 2, which is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. I'm going to use the word inventive a lot across all 3 of my choices because I think I just admire games that are willing to take risks or do really cool things, and Majora's Mask is inventive in that they finished Ocarina of Time, and they were like, we need to do a sequel, and some of Nintendo wanted to take their time, but another part of the team were like, we can make a game within a year on the same engine, and Nintendo was like, all right, do it, I dare you, and they did, and they delivered a game that I think is a lot better in Ocarina in that it takes more narrative risks, more game design risks in terms of its 72-hour clock-based system, how you can just do... It's 72-hour clock-based system, and it's really deep and interesting sub-quest options with the Bomber's Notebook. Packed into that is a variety of different kind of gameplay options and unique kind of stories you can get into with just the gauntlet of kooky, crazy story ideas from real estate conspiracies to UFO abductions, and it all pays off in really satisfying ways. I think it's the best Zelda game overall to date, even though Breath of the Wild would come close to probably being my favorite Zelda game if it had a little bit stronger of a narrative, but Majora beats it in that.
Yeah, I mean, I never was a huge fan of Majora, and I understand that there's that that core audience that makes it seem like Majora is the game. Like, that's the best game in the franchise because it is so dark. It's the Empire Strikes Back of Zelda games. I never got to... I've seen it played multiple times. I've seen it beat multiple times. I never found the...
Oh, you never played Majora's Mask?
I played it. And stuff like that. I just never went deep into it because I had really no interest to it after playing Ocarina of Time and stuff like that. And that was like, I thought, close to a pretty damn good, perfect game to an adventure that this was completely out left field. But I understand the following that the game has behind it, and especially with the Bomber's Notebook and stuff that you were talking about, and all the extra story modes to it, making sure that you had even getting all the masks, so there was that collector's aspect to the game, and altering stories that you've seen in the game, because everyone's so depressed, but you're actually making people happy throughout the whole game too, by just being able to manipulate time over the course of 3 days.
Yeah.
See, I can agree with Tom on one thing about Majora's Mask. That is my second favorite Legend of Zelda game, and I love that game. And the fact that they did make it in a year is crazy because that game is so in-depth, and I feel like they do have an incredible story, and in less than a year, they made a story just as great as Ocarina of Time, I think. But, just Breath of the Wild is not my favorite Legend of Zelda game. But, Majora's Mask is...
how do I put it? I don't want to play a Zelda game that doesn't do what Breath of the Wild did ever again.
Yeah.
I'll eventually at some point this year replay Majora's Mask as his habit, but I'm gonna be like, I have to play the game I have to play based on these mechanics after Breath of the Wild. Oh no!
Yeah,
so
that's gonna be pretty tough.
Yeah, I think their future goals just need to be pairing Breath of the Wild's gameplay with narrative
Story.
that gets kind of as ambitious as they did in the past.
Yeah, I completely agree because I play Legend of Zelda games for the story because they're great. Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time and not Skyward Sword. But yeah, it was crazy that they did that. And every little side story felt like a full story for that game.
I got you.
And they need to do something like that again. And they could do that with a Breath of the Wild game. And if they could do a huge game like that and incorporate stories like they did with Majora's Mask, that would be incredible if they could do something like that.
I'd buy that for $1.
They could take Breath of the Wild and put out DLCs with Majora's Mask little side stories and just put them in the game. I would buy DLCs like that from Nintendo.
They should.
What's your number one?
So anyway, bouncing off of a phrase Josh used earlier in the discussion, my number one is a damn perfect game. It is beginning to end a perfect use of concept, mechanics, story, and just wrapped up in a short little package that doesn't overstay its welcome and uses everything efficiently. And that game is BioShock Infinite. JK.
Oh man, Brian almost fell out of his chair.
I did.
There. He was so excited. He was like, "Oh, it's finally happening!"
Thought he changed it up on.
And that game is Portal. I think Portal, top to bottom, is a masterpiece. It's the little sleeper hit that ended up overshadowing everything else in the orange box. Ingenious game mechanics with what you can do with the portal gun. A interesting and darkly hilarious story involving Chell trying to escape from Aperture Science and its creepy humorous overlord GLaDOS, and just the amount of replayability you can get. Like, I space it out a little bit so that the puzzles kind of lapse in my memory, and then I have to kind of challenge myself to remember them again. But even still, it's a fun and engaging game, and it keeps you on your toes, and I love it. And as I said when I was hyping it up, it's a game that knows how long it needs to be, and then just wraps everything up. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's really, really just a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful game.
Yeah, when I played Portal the first time, because I was intrigued when I think I saw a trailer or some type of gameplay for it, and that was the only reason I actually bought the orange box. Because I'm not a huge Half-Life fan. I mean, I've played the first Half-Life, and I enjoyed that one, but when it came to Half-Life 2, I was like, then there's extra stories to it, then there's chapters, but it's not complete, so you don't want to buy this until the complete version comes out. And then Team Fortress is a great online game.
Joke's on us.
You got to do that. And I'm just like, well, I'll just go ahead, and there was this little game in there called Portal, and I decided to just play it, and I was like, okay, it's just a puzzle game. And then when you get halfway through the game and you realize, like, now there's a whole extra game, like an actual, like a shooter game that's still a puzzle game inside of it, and it combined two things that you never really hear of, is a first-person shooter and a puzzle game at the same time.
Right.
Blew my mind. And it's hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah. You have anything to add on it, Brian?
I do not know.
No? You've never played Portal?
Yes, I definitely have played Portal. And I am a huge fan of Portal and Portal 2 and that whole universe of Half-Life. But I am one of the sad people that will never get the full story of all that. And hopefully they are making a Portal 3 or something out there.
Valve doesn't know how to make thirds.
Yeah, they don't know how to make. They don't know how to count the 3. We do, because that's our podcast name. Maybe we'll make Portal 3 and I don't know.
No, we're only going to make 2 episodes of this podcast.
Yes, then we're never going to make a third one.
Sponsored by Valve.
Sponsored by
Not actually sponsored by
Valve. We're out here. Yeah, I mean, they just covered everything. That was the perfect puzzle story first-person shooter game, which there's no other game that has all those genres in it. I mean, it was the perfect game. And Tom doesn't agree, but he doesn't think there should have been a Portal 2. But
There should not have been.
Portal 2 just did everything Portal 1 did and did it better.
And funnier.
And it was funnier, yeah. They did it better.
Nah.
And they added on to the story. That was a game that didn't need a sequel.
That is one thing, though, and I'll go with that too, because
they did it good.
We talk about Valve and they not being able to make.
Sorry, not good.
Talk about Valve and not being able to make thirds and stuff.
Yeah.
But all the games that they make, the second one is, from what I'm gathering, the best of all of them. You know, everyone says Half-Life 2 is so much better than Half-Life 1. Am I wrong?
No, Half-Life 1, I'm not going to lie, was not that great of a game.
Okay.
Half-Life 1 hasn't aged well, but 2
has.
has.
No. Yeah,
Okay.
2 has. And Half-Life 1, in all honesty, I mean, if you played it back then, yeah, it was a cool first-person shooter, but it wasn't anything super great.
Right.
But Half-Life 2 is what, like, redefined story and first-person shooters.
But like one of the craziest games that like people forget about a lot is Left 4 Dead.
That was
Left 4 Dead is great, but then Left 4 Dead 2 came out, and that game was incredible. And they went in the DLC and added all the maps from the first game and all the weapons from the first game. So it was just like, hey, remember everything you loved about the first one? Now play it in the second one.
And they did the same thing with Counter-Strike, too. Counter-Strike 1.6 was so popular, and they brought out Counter-Strike Source, and that game blew up. And that was Counter-Strike 2.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys know that, but...
Right. Here's my big beef of why I will challenge that Portal 2 doesn't follow that formula, and it's just the simple fact that, all right, yes, Portal 2 has a interesting, funny, and just really cool story, but my problem is that in Portal 2, it's like the story is kind of put over the gameplay to a degree that it doesn't feel as natural and organic to explore the world. Like, every puzzle seems to serve not the gameplay, or like in Portal 1, everything moved forward together. Every puzzle you advanced through, the story advanced with it. But in Portal 2, it was just like, it's like the puzzles were almost secondary. It was just like, we just need to get you to the next funny thing that Stephen Merchant's going to say. So here's a puzzle, solve it, whatever. Like, there's certain rooms in Portal 2 where you'll be halfway through solving a puzzle, and then GLaDOS will just rip the room down and be like, oh, I'm mad at you for solving this puzzle. Here's me. I'm now. Here's another part of the story. And it's like, that's frustrating. Like, why can't everything just serve an overall function? So I think Portal 2 got so wrapped up in appealing to the demand for more of the world of Aperture that it hurt the world of the game, in my opinion.
I do love Portal 2. I think Portal 2 is a much better game than Portal 1. But I understand what you're saying, where at times it seemed a little too easy, and it held your hand for a good portion of it. But I did start to lose a little bit of interest once you got to, like, I would say 75% of the way, when she introduced the gel.
Yeah, yeah.
Because then the puzzles start to get a little too crazy and too unrealistic, and like you have to do this one particular thing. There wasn't multiple ways of solving the puzzle. You had to do it a particular way, and it kind of took away from the individuality behind it.
And as you said, it's introduced really, really late into the game, whereas like Portal 1 had this nice curve where it was like, here's one portal at a time. Now here's both. Figure out how to use them both, and then we'll give you the ability to control both. In Portal 2, it's like, here's the entire game as you're familiar with it. Are you almost done? Oh, here's something crazy new. And it's like, oh, that's a little bit out of left field, but it feels like we have to do J.K. Simmons doing hilarious speeches about lemonades first before we can introduce this mechanic.
He was hilarious in that
game. I'm not saying he was terrible. Cave Johnson's one of the best things about that game, but again, it's putting the story first and then being like, oh yeah, here's mechanics. Okay, that's why I don't think it's a good Portal. It doesn't portion things out effectively.
Okay.
How many games can you say that about, though?
That's what I mean. That's why Portal is such an exceptional thing, because it did it. Like, you know,
it's like, oh my god, there's mechanics in the game, but the story is terrible. But now you're talking about Portal, and you're like, the story is amazing and the mechanics are good, but now they're taking the story over really good mechanics, like, but you're still playing an amazing game.
So with that, I'll actually jump into my top 3 games here. So the third game on my list came bundled with a console when I got it a long time ago.
Wii Sports, yes.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the most perfect platformers to date. That is Super Mario World.
Wrong Super Mario. But I thought 64 is the correct follow-up to Super Mario.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about Super Mario 64 here in a little bit.
Okay.
So with Super Mario World, though, it came off of the highs of what Super Mario 3 was. Super Mario 3 was one of the best games for the NES. And then the Super Nintendo came out, and you're like, how can you do better than Super Mario 3? And then they came right out of the door with Super Mario World, and it just blew everybody away. To the point where I'll go back and play that game every couple months just because I enjoy it. And I'll do it the long way. I won't try to go right to Star Road, go right to Bowser's Castle. I will go through and do every level in that game and just enjoy the level design, all the hidden pieces to it. I'll read the dialogue because it's still fun. I watch the cutscenes after you beat every castle. All those nice little cutscenes of launching the castle up and then damaging the mountain behind you, and it gets a little bandage on top of its head. Like, those are just the nice little things. The Koopa Kids, they're the individualism. I think that's a real word. Individualism? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I just made it up, if not.
Individuality?
Yeah. Of all the kids. I mean, now that most of them were introduced in Super Mario Brothers 3, but there was so much more. They were different in this one. They all had different powers. They all had different ways to defeating them, rather than just jump on their head 3 times, which is what you had to do. But some of them you had to, shoot them into the lava pits or do this or do that. Super Mario World just took everything that was great with Super Mario 3 and made it better. And that's very rare that you have an amazing game and then its sequel is better than that. And so late into the franchise, because 1 and 2 came out and they were great games. 2, debatable, depending on which 2 you're talking about. But then 3 came out, blew the first 2 out of the water with the creativity behind it. And then, like I said, when World came out, that was just a game changer. And we got to ride Yoshi. Like, who doesn't like the sabotage, get that extra jump by sacrificing Yoshi?
I mean, people who aren't going to grow up to be serial killers.
That's how the speedrunners do it.
Most speedrunners are probably serial killers. Cut that. I don't want to alienate huge audience.
Number 2 on my list is what I believe is the greatest NES game of all time, and that is Castlevania.
Nice.
It has everything that I could hope for in a platformer. It has we'll just start with Universal Monsters. The majority of the Universal Monster franchise is in there. You got Frankenstein, you got the Mummy, you got Grim Reaper type thing, you got Dracula, like all those iconic villains that you have. You have Medusa's in there. All these iconic villains from from literature and stuff in this game. You know, just the opening cutscene of Simon Belmont standing there looking up at the castle. It's just like, I'm going and I'm going to kick some ass. Like, there's so much energy behind just that one shot of just staring up in front of a castle, in front of a gate. And then when you start the game off and that music hits, the Vampire Killer song, which is, anyone's a huge fan of Castlevania, they know exactly what that song is. You get the whip and you start just beating shit with that whip. And then the whip gets more powerful and you feel like you can take on anything in that game. I think it's just a great transition to show where games came from just basic side scrolling to actually going, you know, forwards, backwards, up in certain levels. There's a cutscene at the beginning and at the end of the game, which is actually very unheard of in the NES time frame for when that came out. That's why Castlevania, I think, is up there. I mean, 2 came out and there was some translation errors, and then 3 came out and was right back to what we enjoyed about the first one, to the point where the Castlevania anime that's on Netflix is actually based off of Castlevania 3. I love Castlevania that much that I still think Simon Belmont should be a playable character in Super Smash Bros. The whip is an awesome tool to use in the game. All of his, the holy water, the crosses, the axes, all the weapons that he gains in the game could be all of your up, down, B down, all of your moves and stuff like that. However, I don't think Konami is gonna ever bring that franchise back to light.
Not unless they put Smash Brothers on a pachinko machine.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see Castlevania Survival, Or they'll add them in a DLC with Metal Gear Survive.
So Metal Gear Survive,
R.I.P.
Metal Gear Survive is in the 6 games that you're talking about, right? From earlier, the six chronological games in the Metal Gear franchise.
That's part of That's actually my top favorite game. I just didn't want to tell anybody. It's not out yet.
And then number 1, if anyone knows me, knows that this is my favorite game of all time. I've owned this game more than I could possibly imagine. That is Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight is everything that I love about retro gaming in a modern game. It takes some of the best games that you played as a child, from DuckTales to
Adventure of Link.
No. Well, no. Adventure of Link is not a good game.
No one loved playing that as a child, Brian.
I did. I mean, I don't know.
To Mario 3, to Mega Man and stuff like that. There's so much in that game, and the fact that it started off as a Kickstarter and became as huge as it is now. I own that game on PC. I own it on 3DS. I own it on Wii U, PS4, Xbox One, the Vita. I actually have the physical copy of the Vita version of it because I love that game so much. I want to have every physical copy of that game that I possibly can, because it means that much to me, and it's everything that I love. I'm a huge retro gamer, as a lot of people know, but when that game came out, I was like, this is everything that I wanted in one game. That I've played that game so many times. I beat that game 4 times in one day just because I wanted to keep playing it over and over again. And still to this day, they are releasing DLC for free to the people who already own that game. And they're long story DLCs, explaining some of the knights that you've already fought in the game's past story and explaining why they're doing what they're doing for the Enchantress. Like, it's just a great overall perfect game, and it's that perfect blend of retro and modern that a lot of companies try to do, and a lot of indie companies try to do, that just doesn't work majority of the time. And this was like these are the guys that originated that, I think. Now Yacht Club Games is got my vote for one of the best indie companies out there right now, and I'm hoping that Shovel Knight 2 delivers. So no pressure on that one. I think they were talking about going to like a Nintendo 64 style for Shovel Knight 2. So we'll see about that.
I'm totally down for that.
So I just want to say something, Tom. Your number 1 was Portal, right?
Yeah.
So clearly, Josh and I go back and play our games, even though we've beaten them 1,000 times, and we just can't stop playing them. Do you have that same feeling for your top 1 game?
I think I've at least played Portal once a year, every year since it's come out. Like I said, I sometimes give myself a fair amount of space between the things that I say I really, really love. Like, even if we were getting to my top favorite films of all time, I put some space between them because I like coming back and sitting down and having, like, muscle memory take over, or just letting, like, that thing where it's like, oh, yeah, I didn't explicitly remember this moment, but now I remember, like, why this game, like, wowed me in that way. So...
And yours is a different genre, too. It's not like, you can just... Yours is more of a puzzle game where...
Yeah.
Ours is like a fast-paced...
Yeah.
Adventure game type thing. So, I mean, it is two different genres. Well, kind of three different genres. But
it's
I can
a puzzle
see why
game.
yours you can't keep playing over and over again every day. So
it's a puzzle game you can beat in 2 hours.
Yeah.
So the fact that if I were to just play it every week, I'd be like, yeah, that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You got a puzzle shooter for his. You got your RPG
action adventure
punishment system.
It's not really.
It's kind of a hack and slash, but a strategic
hack and slash.
A strategic hack and slash.
I wouldn't call Bloodborne or Dark Souls games hack and slash. In all honesty.
Okay.
I'd call myself a strategic hack.
And then you got a side-scrolling kind
Yeah.
of RPG, but not really RPG, but side-scrolling platformer.
Yeah.
So we got a good variety overall in the games we have. And speaking of variety, let's segue into our second topic. PlayStation last week just announced, well, not just announced, but last week announced they have a new console variant coming out for Call of Duty World War II. And have you guys seen this console yet?
Yeah.
I did. When you told me about it,
I
threw up in my mouth.
I was saying, what is your what's your take on it? Like,
I actually sold everything I owned so I could purchase it. Even though I already own a PlayStation Pro, I had to have it. I pre-ordered it. No, I'm just kidding. It's disgusting. I don't know why they're bringing it out. I don't know who would buy this piece of junk.
So for
I'm very cynical right now about the continuation of the Call of Duty franchise. Most, AAA first-person shooter stuff at this point is just like, yeah, I get it. It's going to come out, it's going to have a lackluster story mode, and it's going to be mostly focused on multiplayer for a year until everyone abandons it for the next thing that comes out. So these games just don't feel fulfilling anymore, and I don't see what buying an expensive new console that just looks like an ugly turd is going to get me pumped for it.
Everyone that wants to play Call of Duty is already going to have the console.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
come on.
For those of you listening that haven't seen it yet, Call of Duty and PlayStation are releasing a bundle that is a PlayStation 4 that is camouflaged.
And by camouflaged, means the retro, green, black, tan, splotchy design reminiscent of that era of history.
Yes.
Right. Along with a pea soup colored green controller with it.
They already have a camo controller for the PlayStation 4 as well, if you didn't know that.
Which you think they would have just added that with the system.
Yes.
But one thing, I don't know if you guys noticed it when you're looking at it. Did you notice the littlest detail, though, with the camouflage inside the system?
PlayStation controller?
Yeah, there's little PlayStation controllers actually inside the camouflage, which I thought was creative, but still, the only person that could probably buy this console is John Cena.
Yeah,
I mean, they're just selling pretty much an empty box right now. But
stupid.
Yeah, so for the pre-orders for the bundle went live last week. It gets released the same time as the game does on November 3rd. In US, it's priced at $300. So I think that's actually $50 more than a PlayStation is. My other problem that I have with this console, though, is why isn't it a PlayStation Pro?
I think that's because that's still seen as another tier up, and that's for a certain niche of customer. They know that Call of Duty is a game that's played by a much broader audience, so it's just easier to sell them on a standard console than saying, well, hey, this one, it's got all these extra features, and they're just like, I'm just gonna play one game a year on this too. If you know what I mean, Call of Duty kind of falls into the same genre of gameplay release, similar to Madden, where it's certain gamers are just looking for those two landmark titles to hit their yearly installments, and then they're only going to play that. So what do they need what do they need a Pro for,
Yeah, and the other thing is too with the Pro, I don't think that they want to do like you said, it's the Pro is for the specific people that want a Pro. I don't think they want, they don't want a black Pro, they don't want a white Pro, they don't want a camouflage Pro, they don't want the blue Pro.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna buy a Pro, you're gonna buy a Pro. They don't need, the kids out there to be like, oh, I want a million different colors in the Pro, because the parents that are gonna buy the kids their consoles are gonna be like, all right, I'm probably going to buy the cheapest one that I can get if there's two consoles.
Right. Yeah. That's actually, At Genius, we are still littered with parents who don't know the difference between things,
Exactly.
That joke will never die.
Now, going off of what you guys were saying, though, last week or 2 weeks ago when Destiny 2 came out, they released a PlayStation 4 Pro Special Edition for Destiny 2. It was a white PS4 Pro.
Right.
That came out specifically for it. So, why can Destiny do it, but not Call of Duty? Which is, PlayStation knows that Call of Duty is going to sell hundreds of thousands of copies.
But, I'm trying to put it in a way where I don't want to insult a particular audience of gamers, but, Call of Duty has wide casual appeal. Mm-hmm. I know people who are not out-and-out gamers. I know dudes who are just, general managers of retail stores or, accountants, and they don't go hardcore into gaming, but they have a PlayStation that they can play Call of Duty on with their buddies because it's kind of like a relaxing, unwinding pastime. But I think Destiny has a broader appeal that maybe there are some casual gamers who like Destiny, but there are hardcore, into it on Reddit at conventions gamers who play Destiny and might want a custom PS4 Pro for that reason.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we've seen console variations and variants since the Atari days. Was there any consoles that, even though you guys already owned that system, you saw a new one come out and you're like, I have to have that one?
There's been a couple throughout history, just eye-catching models that I'm like, ooh, and sometimes it's like, but I already own this. Am I willing to double dip,
I think the Game Boys were probably the first ones for me. I had a Game Boy. I don't think I had a Game Boy Color. I think I had the regular, not the regular Game Boy, but the mini ones that they launched.
The Game Boy Pockets.
The Game Boy Pockets, and that's when they started doing colors after that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that's when I started wanting, I'm like, oh man, I want a different color Game Boy now. And then the Game Boy Colors came out and they started doing the clear ones.
The clear purple one, I think pretty much everyone had that one.
Yeah, I definitely had that one.
I'd say the first one that I was like, oh, I wish I could get this, was for me the Panasonic Q, which was the Japan exclusive GameCube model that had a DVD player in it.
Mm-hmm.
I wished I knew what importing was back then, so I could have had that. It, beyond the fact that it played DVDs, which is a super cool feature, it just looked cool. It had that shiny, reflective finish. It lit up in really cool patterns, and I loved it. I love the look of it, and I wish I could have had it.
I didn't have any of the N64 variants, but I am pretty sure, and I still do to this day because they're in the other room, have a million colors of the N64 controllers.
Oh yeah,
and I have the skins for the controllers. I still have the Donkey Kong banana sleeve.
That's awesome.
Nice.
For one of the N64 controllers. It's on back there. So aside from having multiple controllers, I actually have sleeves for the controllers as well. So that's another thing I have for variants still sitting around to this day. And I think the only other variants that I actually owned were different Wii controllers.
Okay.
And maybe a couple special edition controllers.
But was there any that you saw out there that you were like, I need that one, but I don't want to buy it? I want that one more than anything.
When Metal Gear Solid 4 came out, that is the only reason I bought the PlayStation 3, because they announced that Metal Gear Solid 4 was coming out for PlayStation 3 only. And then they announced that there was going to be a Metal Gear Solid 4 PlayStation 3. And I hate them for announcing that after, it was like, right before the game was going to come out, they announced that, and I'm like, I already have a PlayStation 3. I'm not going to buy a new PlayStation 3 just for that console. So I really wanted that for the longest time, but, I wasn't going to... I was working minimum wage job at the time and all that, so I definitely couldn't afford just to buy a new console and take the loss for trading in my PlayStation 3.
The only console I've ever... the only variant, besides a Red N64, but the only one I've actively purchased new was I got the Hyrulean Crest edition of the new Nintendo 3DS XL when it came out in the fall of 2015. I had missed the Majora's Mask one because it was easier to find Bigfoot than get one of those, and I love it. It's just always like the 3DS is the biggest like cock tease when it comes to variants in terms of what Nintendo does right now. Because even so far as the most recent Direct, it's like, look at this one, it's so cool, and it's like, but I already own one. Like, you know what I mean? It's the 3DS gets some really interesting variants released, and sometimes they tempt me.
When I'm out there looking, like, because I go to a lot of flea markets and a lot of game conventions and game shops and stuff like that. One system I'm actually actively looking for is the Xbox 360, the R2D2 and C3PO one, the R2D2 console with the C3PO controller. Just everything about that system I absolutely loved. With the fact that you turned the power button on and it made R2D2 beeping sounds, like I was like, I love that thing. I love everything about it. I was in the same boat with you guys looking at the Game Boy Color. At the time, I had the purple see-through one. Like I said, pretty much I think everyone had that one.
Yeah.
But then just being in my gaming collecting binge that I'm in, now I have a whole bunch of Game Boy Colors that are different ones. I have a whole bunch of Game Boy Pockets that are different colors. One of my most prized possessions that I have is a Game Boy Advance Micro that is the Famicom. So it's the gold and red Famicom edition of the Game Boy Micro, which is actually pretty hard to come by, but I absolutely love having that. I have the Gears of War Xbox 360, the red one with the skulls on it, with the matching controllers to it as well. I don't know if you could consider, when the Xbox One came out, they had the Day One edition. Now it was just a controller; it was pretty much the difference between it. But it said Day One edition, and it had the year underneath it. I have the Pikachu N64, and that's still probably one of the coolest looking consoles that I own, just because it's the yellow underside, the blue top, and a giant Pikachu just on the side of it. I wish I had the Japanese one that was orange, but the N64, I'm not a huge N64 fan. I just don't think those games hold up over time. They haven't aged well, one would say.
Mario 64 definitely holds up to this day.
Absolutely. It hasn't aged at all.
Yeah.
It's like they dipped that game in the fountain of youth.
Okay. We'll get to Mario 64 then for you guys. But yeah, there's been so many out there that I just love looking at them, and I was one of the few people that actually got one of the Majora's Mask new 3DS XLs, and I love it. And I have multiple 3DSs and DSs because they're all Zelda ones.
I have the Link Between Worlds 3DS
because
XL.
it's Legend of Zelda. Like I need to have Legend of Zelda on an item. I have the Legend of Zelda Wii U, like.
Right.
I have just the gamepad. Like it was just, it's not a Sheikah slate.
A what? I thought those were Legend.
I haven't seen one of those in over 100 years.
One of my favorite things in just researching console variants, though, are seeing the consoles that were made in limited qualities for contests and just kicking myself for never knowing those contests were around. There were Xbox 360s custom made to tie in with the 2008 Dark Knight movie, and it was 55 were made of two types of consoles, one with Batman on it and one with the Joker on it, and they were given away through Domino's Pizza. And I was like, when did this happen? As a fat guy who ate a lot of Domino's in college, I do not remember this contest happening at all. There was a pretty slick Beatles Rock Band console where the entire case was painted in like the art styles of the game. Only 50 of those were apparently made. There was a Xbox 360 made in, basically the case was made to look like beach sand, and it had a plaque with the BioShock logo on it, so it looked like you were like on the floor of the ocean with it. And it's actually currently not known how many of them were made, but just seeing that it's out there, and it's like, oh, I want that so bad.
When it came to, the DS, I think the Xbox is a huge contributor of variations and stuff like that. Just looking at some of like the Taco Bell Xbox 360 that came out, the
Taco Bell.
the Mountain Dew the original Xbox that came out. I mean, there's just so many different sponsorships and stuff. Like, there's a Game Gear that was sponsored by Coke. Like, first a Game Gear. Like,
Right.
We actually looked these up. If you go to consolevariations.com, they have every variation of every console, controller, and everything on there.
It gives you a brief history on each one of them as well, too.
Yeah, so there are a ton that we didn't even know about. It's just crazy. Like, there's some consoles that there was only one made of, just for competitions, like he was saying, that we didn't even know existed.
So mad kudos to the boys at this website, for
they got all
of this.
They got all these together, and some of these are pretty ridiculous.
So, if you guys haven't noticed, these two have constantly kept hinting at Mario 64, and I think about ready to talk about it in our reoccurring segment, Gaming Confessions. My confession this week is I absolutely hate Mario 64. I don't understand the appeal behind it. It hasn't aged well. Every time I play it or try to play it, I'm just like, why do people enjoy this game? The only thing I can find remotely good about that game is the soundtrack. That's it. There's the level design, I think, is very poor. The camera is horrible. The controls are ridiculously stupid.
I mean, that's N64 games in general. Who puts three... I mean, we don't have three hands. I don't know how we're supposed to play the N64.
Well, you guys don't have three hands.
Like, why is that game as good as people think it is?
Because it's a great game.
Just great game, yeah.
Like,
See,
I'm sorry you were born with a condition that you can't acknowledge a third dimension, but Mario 64 is great in that it takes him out of the inferior flat 2D world of platforming and puts him in this great, expansive, fun to explore world where just all the levels are designed with a really great learning curve in mind that teaches you the game mechanics as it's allowing you to explore. And it's insanely fun and replayable. I do not understand how you formed this very, very ill-conceived opinion.
The camera is probably the worst thing in that game. I mean, it did become like the first real 3D platformer, and it kicked off a lot of 3D platformers at that time. But the camera is horrendous. But it is, to this day, still a great 3D platformer to go back and play.
Why
the levels, the hub, the design of the game, the controls are not terrible. The 64
why is the camera bad? Somebody sum up why the camera's bad, because I don't think there's anything wrong with the camera.
Because you have to use the C buttons to control the camera, and at certain points when you get in certain corners and stuff, the camera just like gets shoved up your ass.
Yeah, it really does. To the point where I don't know what I'm looking at.
Exactly. And there's certain points where you can't control the camera and turn it to an angle where you can see, and you're forced to move so the camera can actually get to a point where you can see. And if you're stuck in a spot where you really don't want to move because you're trying to get into a position to get into a jump,
and then like you're tapping over to try to walk, and then your character's just running to the other side of the screen.
Correct.
And stuff like that. You have...
Or if you move a little bit and then Mario does that stupid jump thing where he's like falling off of a cliff.
And he's stuck in the cliff.
Yeah, and it's stupid like that. There are certain points like that, but that is very few and far between, and that does not ruin the game, because that game...
There's just...
It's potentially nostalgia bias for me, but I don't find using the C buttons to be problematic, and I don't know. I felt like... I agree, because I laughed at it when Brian brought it up, that like sometimes the game doesn't know exactly how to acknowledge that Mario is in a certain spot, so it's like, well, what's happening? But
yeah,
I don't know. I've never experienced problems with the camera, so I don't know.
But even when they re-released it on the DS,
the DS,
I still thought it was bad. Like I just don't understand the appeal behind it, and it's like, hey, let's go play this level. Now go back in and play it again. Now go back in and play it again. Now go back in and play it again, just to get... Like, I don't understand why people think that that's one of the greatest games on the N64, and there's much better games out there. Now, I'm not a huge N64 fan, but I can at least name 5, 6, even 10 games probably better on the N64 than Mario 64 itself.
But see, all the 3D platformers that came out after Mario were based on Mario, so just kind of like every other game, like every other first-person shooter that came out after Doom based their games off of Doom, and just like, although Doom is probably the best first-person shooter at that time, even though they tried to copy Doom. But my point is that they could polish everything that Mario didn't do extremely well. Even though Mario did it extremely well, because Nintendo
there's just so many
does
better
polish
3D
their games.
Mario games out there. Like
now there are, yes.
Yeah, but even in that, I'm not 3D in that time frame, but like when Sunshine came out. Sunshine, much better Mario game than Mario 64.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah,
I'm not going to question
disagree
that.
With that. But Mario,
I just don't get,
time,
like, everyone just faps themselves over how great Mario 64 is.
Because
like,
the fact that it was the first 3D game and they did it very well, and that you can go back to it now and it's still a good 3D game.
Debatable.
It's a fact. Look it up on Wikipedia.
So Josh, you complained about the gimmick of re-entering a level every time. I don't see how that's any different than in, say, Mario 3, Super Mario Brothers 3, or Super Mario World's map system, where you have to manually enter every course within a world. Like, each of the world has 6 stars, 7 with the 100 coin bonus, and you have to re-enter variations of that world every time to complete the objective. Like, when you're re-entering a world, puzzles reset, like new things emerge, because it's like, okay, this is the objective of this, and I don't see any difference than like being in, like, you know,
the hub world of
Super
Mario 3, the hub world of Super Mario 3,
right?
Just going around the map.
Yeah, it's like, sorry,
but even if you look at it's like all the other gimmick things that they tried to make you do in that game. So when you're on the ice path and you have to sled down the ice and stuff like that.
Fun.
What? No, it is not fun. It's not enjoyable.
It's so fun.
I don't get the appeal. But if anyone else thinks that I'm crazy or whatnot,
I'm pretty sure 99.999% of everybody that plays video games think you're crazy, because everyone else likes Mario 64.
If you think I am correct in thinking that Mario 64 is a shitty game, leave it in the comments. Let us know what you think.
Well, where can they find us to leave said comments, Josh? It'd be a good idea on the pilot episode to plug where we're coming at them from.
They can find us online at 3to Play Games on Facebook. Be sure to spell out the word 3. There you can join the discussion by sharing your own list and confessions. And most importantly, you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. And until next time, this has been Josh,
Brian,
and Tom.
And just remember, there's no debate that can't be settled in multiplayer.